Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. We are fully into April. We are enjoying the lengthening days, the warming months. Because my kitchen was such a rat fuck for 3 months, I didn't really get a chance to really do some gardening, but I'm hoping this weekend, this is my first fucking weekend that I don't have anything to do. So I'm going to do some gardening. I'm going to try to start getting some shit together. Nate, what's your garden looking like? I know you're not planning to stick around for much longer. So are you even bothering with a garden this year?
I had a bunch of when we were away, when we had to stay in the hotel because they were doing work on our house, I had a bunch of bulbs of garlic or cloves of garlic that sprouted, and so I just took them outside and planted them. And I think 4 have thrived. So that's what I've got going on. I've got 4. I'll have 4 bulbs of homegrown garlic, pilfered off the grocery store garlic, but it works. I've done it before. I'm just really focused on weeding more than anything else. I mean, like I probably need to get out and hit a couple of the areas with like a rake and a hoe and stuff like that, just to get rid of some of the weeds that are obviously sprouting. But like it is sunnier now. We've had some really nice sunny days, but it isn't really warm yet. Like it's probably in the low 50s today, and so like we had a 4-day government weekend basically because they have Good Friday and Easter Monday are bank holidays in the UK.
Yeah. So some countries properly respect the rise of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Yeah, I
Well,
had to go to
bear in
work.
mind that the Church of England is the official state religion here, and so it's just how the government works. But I didn't really take advantage of it because I did finally complete the hell that was packing and shipping all those orders. I mean, obviously, I had huge help from Tom, and also help from Riley and Hussein. They came in and helped a little bit as well. Riley helped. Riley came for a whole Saturday afternoon and helped. So that was nice. We got it done. But finally, the drama was resolved. Royal Mail blew their first pickup date, just no showed. But showed up on Thursday night, picked up right after the post office was like, yeah, we do not bring us more bags of this shit. We can't take any more of your stuff. And the Royal Mail showed up and picked up the last, I think, 11 bags, and everything was fine. It dispatched, which meant it got processed that night, which meant that the postage labels weren't going to expire, because when you do click and drop for small business stuff, you have a week to post it.
Yep.
But I couldn't post it over the weekend because bank holidays means it's just not going to get processed. And so it all got taken away. And I swear to you, man, the first thing I did was like fucking do a victory dance, just like a fuck yeah kind of response. And then immediately after, I just realized how incredibly tired I was, how completely exhausted I was from dealing with all of this, from working over at least one day on the weekend, all of like there's the physical work involved, it's way faster for me to ride my bike up. So I was, riding to and from the studio, like just so much just hit me all at once. And Thursday night, Cynthia and I both went to bed at like 10:15 p.m. But I made a crucial mistake. I didn't want to be on Twitter whiling away my hours on the long weekend on Twitter. I didn't want to be on my phone. So I cracked open Civ 6.
I don't want to do crack, and I don't want to do cocaine. What I want to do is heroin.
Yeah, so that got me good. And then I decided to vary things up a little by getting Age of Empires 4, so I could at least have something that I didn't, come into with the immediate addiction of Civ 6, which is just endless. And I mean, it was a substitute. It still provides the same response. But I mean, I cooked, I cleaned up, I vacuumed, cleaned up around the kitchen and bathrooms. I ran the steam cleaner on like a Karcher, it's like a steam mop on the tile floors in the kitchen, the bathroom. I cleaned the upstairs bathroom sinks, all this stuff. I, cooked some nice dinners for me and Cynthia, ran some errands, went to the grocery store, we went for a walk. But like, I spent most of the long weekend gaming, I'm not going to lie.
It sounds like you used that long weekend exactly what it should have been used for. A little bit of self-care. It's all right.
Right, but also it's like, I'm still kind of tired, and I probably would have rested a little better if I wasn't staring at a laptop. But at the same time, I think the thing that was nice about it was, for one, Age of Empires 4, I'd say, just doing it in the very beginning phases of playing campaign mode, it's easy to have like a stopping point. You get to a certain thing at the end, and it's like, all right, this is a logical stopping point, as opposed to Civ 6, which just goes on forever. And you can literally play past the end of the game if you want to, which I've done before, just being insane, wanting to solve a problem or invade another country or something. But Age of Empires. I don't know. Have you played it before? I mean, I played
I've
the
never
original.
played any of these games. I
Really?
have I have one of the Civs. I think I have 5 and 6 that I bought on like sales for dirt cheap. And like I try to get into them. I try to it's just real time strategy games ended with Red Alert for me. And like they're very the thing is that they're way more complicated. Like Red Alert was just a military thing. StarCraft, Warcraft, like all those older kind of RTS games. I played the shit out of those because it's easy. You point and click and you say, you guys go smash those guys. And hopefully I got more of my guys than those guys. But I know with Civ and Age of Empires and that there's a lot of diplomacy and there's a lot of things you have to pay attention to. And like for me, currently when I'm just like I want to sit and zone out, I grab my Switch and play Stardew Valley because there's not a whole lot of thinking I got to do for that.
Civ is turn based. The diplomacy stuff isn't really all that complicated in Civ. I mean, like there are certain ways you can finagle things. Like if you just absolutely do not have the ability to get certain resources, you'll have to trade them from other people. But I don't know. I find the real time strategy stuff a little more complicated because with Age of Empires, like it's just so much happening all at once. Like you have a situation where one thing's popping off in one place and then another thing's happening in another place, and like the jumping around back and forth, like it feels as though it's a little more stressful, if that makes sense. You don't have, all the time in the world to make your decision.
Yeah, hopefully our first gamer president is a guy or a gal who's really good at Age of Empires and just constantly
There's
ready.
the other ones like Hearts of Iron or whatever that's supposed to be even more complicated. Like I've never played any of these games. When I
Hearts
went
of
and clicked,
Iron though, like every time I see it, like I'm not going to shit talk people who play Hearts of Iron, but from what I've seen, questionable people play that game. Like the more questionable people with questionable politics are headed or head more towards Hearts of Iron. I don't know anything about them. I don't. I play fucking. The game I'm excited about this year is another port of another Katamari game. So
yeah, I mean,
and
I just
Star
don't
Wars game,
game
I
that
guess.
much, and so I just don't game that much, and so it's like in a way having the ability to, what's it called, like finding a game that I connect with is kind of a rare phenomenon for me, and I will play it, sometimes play the hell out of it, but then probably drop off. Like I realized going through just looking at some of the achievements you can unlock in Age of Empires 4 that there are so many different campaigns you can go through, and each one of those like takes, that's a 6-7 whole game set missions, just takes forever. And so yeah, I don't know if I'll follow this or not. I mean, it's famous last words to be like, I just play a little, I'm not going to get into it. And it's just like months later, still on the couch, still doing it. But yeah, I mean, I will say this much: I'm not proud of it. I feel kind of like I got hit with a time warp in some ways because I was so hyper fixated on it when I was playing the game. I wasn't doing it every hour of the day, but when I was playing it. But I didn't check Twitter at all, and I just didn't care about any of the whatever bullshit was going around. And if there was anything that would have been relevant to me, it doesn't seem to have crossed my real life timeline.
Somebody would have
So
posted it in the WhatsApp group.
yeah, you guys send me stuff periodically, and so I do find out about it. But yeah, like it was, I don't know, it was nice, but I don't necessarily recommend staying up late playing video games. I think I've told the
And not
story
not
about
at our
my
age, at
dad.
least.
Yeah, I looked at my dad after at 4 a.m. being like, my city's going to shit, when he's like drawn on graph paper how he wants to plan out his city, and he managed to get a city of like 5,000 people, which was way more than any of the rest of us in the family who were playing the game had. So yeah, like maybe I'm just taking after him, but I don't know. I don't want to be a all night gamer. I don't want to do this. I want to be normal. I just want to like be excited about trying out my new, I don't know, cleaning tools, something like that,
We
cooking implements.
Yeah, we are. I don't remember if I talked about it, but when we remodeled the kitchen, I've always done all of my cooking in an old cast iron pan, like a pan that's like 50 years old. But because we got this new nice glass cooktop and the cast iron is it's kind of scratchy on the bottom, so I was like, well, I don't want to spend money to restore this, and I don't want it to fuck the thing up. So my wife bought this big kind of deep, like you can fry in it, you can put it in the oven, but it's completely non-stick as well. And like the only thing you use to clean it out is like a little bit of water and a paper towel. phenomenal. I love cooking in this thing. I have a deep seated like desire for like I'm of an age now where I'm just like I want more tools. Like the next thing I really want to get is a miter saw because I don't like what if I need to cut something at a 45-degree angle? And you would think, but Francis, when have you ever needed that? I have needed it before, and I have to borrow a miter saw, but I really want I you know they're expensive. It's like a whole fucking table saw. So and I haven't really needed it to justify on a regular basis. But yeah, you can definitely be a normal dad figure and not play video games and instead spend all of your money on other dumb bullshit that you don't need. Uh, but you know, video games at least are probably won't take your thumb off. So depending on what you're playing.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm excited to figure out all new kinds of dad related things, whatever my interests are, hobbies, DIY, more cooking. Like, I enjoy cleaning in a way that Cynthia doesn't. She likes doing the laundry and she's got a very good system for it, and I don't. So I appreciate her handling it. I really enjoy, I like cooking and I like coming up with new ways to sort of keep the house tidy and organized. I like, finding ways to get additional storage into spaces. When we lived in New York, I was really good on kind of figuring out how I could get shelving and stuff like that or different things in place so that we had more room for things just because like we had a small space. So, there's other things. And I guess in a way it's like no shade to gamers, I guess, but I just, because of my age, right? Because pushing 40 and there's just a sensation of like you have limited free time. So I don't know if I want to spend all my time or a big chunk of my time playing strategy games, even though, I mean, it's your time to choose to do what you will with. I mean, it's just, to me, there's this sensation of like, it's summer break and I've got a whole lot of nothing. It's like, that's when it made sense to play games all the time.
Yeah.
Because, I was like 15 playing Civ 2. It didn't matter.
Shit.
Or even in college.
Yeah,
like, God,
even
when you had
22 years old, fucking drinking a 12-pack of Budweiser, not gaining a single pound, and waking up the next day ready to go. Yeah, those are days I remember and no longer experience.
Well, quite frankly, I just look at it basically that I want to diversify my interests and do more things. Make it a habit of doing outdoor stuff. Every day if I can, unless it's real shit. But yeah, I was exhausted. This was my recuperation. It was being way too methodical, taking way after my dad. Building fortress upon fortress just to sort of stagger my approach to knock down the fucking walls of the city of Kazan in central Russia to destroy the Tatar Republic so we can assert Moscow's dominance over them. Yeah, I had a great time. And that was and I guess in a way it's like, well, I wasn't going to do much else either because just getting up and, cooking a very light meal for myself and Cynthia made me feel really tired because I was just so smoked from the whole week. And I've got 3 live show recordings this week, one of which someone's covering down for me, but 3 Kill James Bond shows. I've got to do 2 of the production on one and then prep someone to handle the other. So this week's busy for me too, and it's like the hits keep coming until I get down to Switzerland for 2 weeks at the end of this month. So yeah, life is what it is. But we're not here just to talk about our plans. We're not here to just talk about dad things, although that is sometimes the content of an entire episode. We also have a story that Francis found about an opera about drone strikes.
All right, so this is something that comes from Task and Purpose from Nicholas Slayton, who's been on the show before, and surely we're going to bring him on again at some point. A new opera about drone strikes is coming to the Kennedy Center. And Nate, I don't know if one can create an opera about drone strikes that isn't going to be highly offensive, but apparently they're going to attempt it. I can't. Let's go through this.
Let's just read this article because I know there are a couple examples. I mean, obviously, I'm not someone who follows opera or contemporary opera or anything along those lines. But obviously, opera is an expansive medium, and you can cover lots of topics with it. I've heard stories of various operas that are contemporary and political that have definitely gotten. And there, when I first moved to New York, there was a production of the opera The Death of Klinghoffer. I don't know if it was in Brooklyn or in Manhattan, but it was engendering a lot of huge outrage from people. And it wasn't new, but basically The Death of Klinghoffer is the story of a cruise ship getting hijacked by the PLO in like the 90s, I think, but it might have come out in the 90s and was set earlier, in which a disabled elderly Jewish man is thrown overboard from his wheelchair, and the stories of the various people on the ship and the hijackers are told through the medium of opera, and the some of the anger was because of the fact that it people thought that it trivialized it, but some of the anger was also because some people got mad that in the opera the Palestinian characters talk about being displaced and being refugees, being their families being kicked out of their homes in 1948 and stuff like that.
Oh,
And so
this that
it,
thing that happened,
the thing that happened in real life, and that
and they're upset
uh,
about it.
yes, they are upset, and that the sort of liberal social order has decided that they have no right to appeal, no right to resist. So a story, but at the same time, also it's based on a true story of guys in one situation, killing a dude by throwing him overboard from his wheelchair. So it's a fucked up story all around. But it was made to an opera, and there were just all these stories of people getting fucking furious about it, protesting outside and stuff like that. And so knowing that, I mean, like I said, I know very, very little about opera at all, but I do know that like contemporary issue operas are a thing that does exist. But this, to me, I'm interested in learning more about it. But I have a feeling I'm going to come away from this reading not very enthused or excited or optimistic.
I'm a little,
So let's just,
a little upset that this isn't going to be like a traveling show. I'm not going to be able to see
yeah.
this at my, the drone opera. We got Miss Saigon. Why can't we get?
Surely they can exhibit this at whatever the main centerpiece opera hall in Washington D.C. is, because if there were ever a place full of people who want to see an opera about drones, I'm assuming it's probably going to be slightly. It
bunch
probably
of
won't be
inside the Beltway dudes with lanyards, just like jerking off
just
and cheering the entire time.
just being huge opera fans wearing khakis and Uniqlo button ups tucked into khakis, but they're wearing opera glasses. Like,
here's the thing, the thing is, we make that joke, and then you're imagining a person, and the thing is that at this point, that person does not remember 9/11 happening because they're too young. But there's still a bunch of lanyard dicks jerking off to drone strikes. So that makes it worse somehow. I feel like, at least like if 9/11 was seared into your brain, like, okay, well, obviously your brain is broken to a point that it did racism, but I at least understand what happened there. Like, this is just a bunch of lanyard dudes that, and of course we're making up a guy to get mad at. We're doing the Twitter thing, but
yeah, that's true. I mean,
that's
who
what
knows?
we do, though.
But let's just read this article and let's see how we feel about it. So, like you said, the headline is: a new opera about drone strikes is coming to the Kennedy Center. Quote, grounded, unquote, follows an F-16 pilot reassigned to operating a drone over Afghanistan.
This is like some Top Gun 3 shit. Tom Cruise is he's finally taken off of the Tomcat. No, they're just gonna put like Tom Cruise, like a Tom Cruise robot inside of a Tomcat. They're always gonna upgrade Tom Cruise, but they're never gonna upgrade his airplane.
Right. I guess the thing with Tom Cruise is they can just they can keep doing like version 19 retools on his face, and they'll do the same thing for his F-16.
That's when you have enough thetas in your bloodstream, your face just does that. It just stays perfect. I don't know what Paul Rudd's doing. Maybe he's like a secret Scientologist, but it just kind of.
This is a relatively short article, so let's read this.
Okay.
Since armed drones became a regular tool in the United States arsenal, movies and television shows have been trying to incorporate them and weigh in on the morals of a drone war. Now it's opera's time, and a new opera about drone strikes is coming to Washington, D.C.'s Kennedy Center. So see, I'm an idiot. I thought the Kennedy Center, because I swear to God, I'm thinking of Lincoln Center in New York City. Kennedy Center is in Washington, D.C. So
is the Kennedy Center, is it an opera house?
Whatever it is, it's in DC.
Okay.
So I don't know what, it's probably just like a venue. I don't know. So once again, me not reading ahead, me coming into this with an open mind, completely brain dead like Larry King, I have failed and have humiliated myself. It is, of course, in Washington, D.C., its target audience. All right. The Kennedy Center and the Washington National Opera announced their 2023-24 season this month, and the opening production is the world premiere of Grounded. The opera, composed by Janine Tesori with a libretto by George Brandt, is adopted from Brandt's 2013 play of the same name. It premieres October 28th, starring Emily D'Angelo. The opera is in English and will have projected lyrics. Grounded follows Jess, an Air Force F-16 pilot who finds herself, as the title suggests, grounded after becoming pregnant. She gets reassigned from flying missions in Iraq to the Air Force's drone program, hunting high-value targets while working in an air-conditioned space back in the United States. The play, essentially a one-woman monologue, follows her as she deals with motherhood, the ethics of drone strikes, and her desire to be back in the skies. It will not...
We're throwing. I'm interested in this now because like this is. I really want to know how Jess, while pregnant and feeling her baby kick, like does the baby kick and she accidentally like target strikes and kills like a wedding family or like a wedding ceremony or something like. This is. I'm interested in this because like now I'm just really confused as to how they're going to how they're going to add all this stuff together. I mean,
let's get to the end of this and then we'll talk.
Sorry, I keep interrupting.
I've got some thoughts.
We got thoughts. All right, we'll do thoughts later.
It will not have the action beats of Tom Cruise trying to shoot down an MQ-9 Reaper in Mission Impossible 3 or the bureaucratic squabbles over ordering strikes like in 2015's Eye in the Sky. It's also a different period in the drone war. When Brandt's play premiered in 2013, early in the second Obama administration, the use of drones was expanding. Obama utilized them far more than his predecessor in the War on Terror, ultimately overseeing 563 total strikes in his 2 terms, according to Air Wars. His successor, Donald Trump, went even further, with drone attacks increasing by the hundreds in his 4 years in office. Exact data on civilian deaths in that period are unclear, as the Trump administration stopped reporting on those casualties. Although President Joe Biden has not kept up the same pace as Trump, since he took office, there have been strikes in Syria, Iraq, Somalia, and elsewhere. The opera version of Grounded was commissioned and co-produced by the Metropolitan Opera, with its world premiere at the Kennedy Center to be followed up with a 2025 run at the Lincoln Center in New York City. Once again, geography failed me. Past productions of the play, including a 2015 staging in New York City starring Anne Hathaway, used projections to help immerse the audience in the pilot's new world of targeted drone strikes. For the Kennedy Center production, the show will use an array of LED screens to provide backdrops and visualize what Jess sees while operating drones. It's not clear how different the story is in its new operatic form or how it will change when done in song. It's worth noting the production is sponsored by General Dynamics, one of the largest defense contractors in the United States and the maker of the F-16, which plays a role in Grounded. Right. So one of the things that I think, look, I haven't seen this. I haven't seen the play. Don't really have any intention of it. I don't think I can see it because I'm not going to Washington, D.C. between October and November 13th. Also, look, one of the things that I think can be a huge challenge is that when you're a veteran and you're not like somebody who is just either grunt style, ball cap, stickers on your car, everything like that, or you're not in like a kind of professional veteran job where you do veteran things and that's like your identity. You're the guy who's there because he's a veteran, or you work for a veteran charity or organization, something along those lines. One of those issues I think is kind of like being able to, well, people are interested, people have opinions, people have thoughts, they have questions, and being able to talk about that in a way where you feel as though like, it's a worthwhile conversation. People want to know what the experience, everything from like what it's like eating an MRE to what it's like being in combat, all that stuff, regardless of what you did in your military career. People have questions, but also people have assumptions. And a lot of those assumptions come from the stuff they encounter. And whether that's on TV or whether that's on, in movies or in any kind of popular culture thing, people are going to have assumptions. And one of the assumptions that I kind of struggle with, I think, is the extent to which so much, in my opinion, veteran-themed stuff can be really, really navel-gazy and really like completely unaware of the wider implications, like the wider anything. I'm not one of these people who thinks that all you ever do is, apologize and say, I'm one of the good ones and, like war crimes are bad, all that shit. Like, yeah, Roger, I think the default assumption is you think war crimes are bad, I hope. I realize actually that's not the default with a lot of people, but you get what I'm going at here. But I think to say, and this is just the summary from this, here's an opera about a woman who can't be an F-16 pilot anymore because she's having a kid. So instead she's a drone pilot and she really misses flying fighter planes. Anyway, it's about being a drone pilot and doing drone strikes. It's sponsored by people who make drones, and it's an opera in DC. There's this sensation of like, are you even going to acknowledge that this is this massive fucking arbitrary death machine that's killed so many people who had nothing to do with anything related to the war? So many people who aren't even on that list of civilian casualties, but either wrong identity or just were not the people who were targeted, or the target packet was wrong. Like, so much of this stuff, it's just people flying planes remotely and just zapping people on the ground, causing absolute fucking terror in these countries where these drones are deployed. Like, to not even be like, yeah, I'm defending America, smoking people on the battlefield, but God, I wish I was flying the cool plane. Like, okay, that's what it sounds like. I don't know what it's actually like. That's what it sounds like. And to me, I'm like, wow, I'll definitely, in a way, I almost am like, is it a good idea to even talk about this? Because anything this myopic from veterans kind of makes all veterans look like chumps. You know what I mean? It makes anyone, because it's like, once again, you're like, oh fuck, yet another thing that completely like not only dodges the question, but just acts as though it's conceived in a universe where the question doesn't exist. You know what I mean?
I'm trying, and the other thing that I'm looking for, I'm trying to find prices here, because one thing, here's the thing, Nate, about art, that really irritates me, is that, again, this opera is not going to go around. It's not going to be out and about where anybody's going
No,
to
not
be able
really. Probably not.
to get to it. But you can't buy just like regular tickets to this thing. You can't just be like, hey, give me a ticket to go see Grounded. You have to buy like a subscription, because Kennedy Center offers like subscriptions. But then when you start looking at like the full price here, so you get like a couple of operas, but this, we're looking at, you have to buy hundreds of dollars worth for one person to go see this. So like, not only is this a play, which again, we haven't seen, I don't know. Maybe General Dynamics is finally doing a little bit of soul searching and digging deep to find the true soul and the heart of who they are, and the terror that they have wrought amongst multiple Middle East countries across the world. I doubt it. I'm a pragmatist. I understand how the world works, but like, there's going to be this creation of art around it, and like, it's not even going to be available. Like, who is this for? Who is why does this exist is my question. Other than severe fucking navel gazing, I feel like,
Yeah.
and again, please, somebody at the Kennedy Center, if you're listening, obviously we have lots of sponsor us to come out. We'll come out and we'll watch. Well, I'll watch Grounded, at least. I'll bring my wife. She and I will watch Grounded and give our opinions on it. I will not pay money for it. So you'll have to buy me the tickets. You can buy me the cheap seats. It's fine. I'm pretty sure I don't need to have great seats to watch LEDs and one person be pregnant and kill people. I
mean, we assume she must do drone strikes if she's a drone pilot, right? Like, we must assume that she must have done click the shoot missile button. Like, maybe not. Maybe she literally just watched the entire time and that was it. But it's one of those things where I get irritated sometimes when the default assumption is that like anybody who has ever worn a uniform ever was just like into war crimes and doing war crimes and wanted to murder people arbitrarily. Like, I mean, I don't deal with this shit because I don't really talk about it on Twitter, but I think it's one of those things where I find that to be one of those things where it's kind of like it's like an online like social media meme that just sort of gets repeated. But obviously there are plenty of people who are fucking pieces of shit who serve the military. We've met plenty of them. But also, like,
the people who love war crimes do exist.
Yeah, they really do. Apparently they work for Matt Getz.
Yeah.
But what I would say is we can't say off the top here that we know for a fact that, like, yeah, she killed people, but chances are good that you're a drone pilot and it's an armed drone, assuming it's not just like a surveillance drone. You probably did. I would assume. But like I said, or
you're involved in it. Like, there's,
I mean, that's very funny, the irony of you and me saying that, considering it's like you, public affairs guy who was in a, service support job, but still like deployed in support of the big fucking invasions, and me, infantry guy who's literally like, dude who was fucking like, my job was in the event of it happening, pulling triggers. And it's like, so be like, oh man, like, you may not have done it, but like criticizing someone else, you may not have done it, but you were part of the system that did it. It's like, yes, I know.
Yeah,
me too.
I know. I'm not, look, I in no way ever defend my time in the military. I do hold up a little bit that I was at least not really a pipe hitter. I was a picture taker, but I understand. I was in support of the things that were going on, and to be honest, I really wasn't all that politically aware until I was in my 30s anyway. So my bad. If I could go back and do it again, I wouldn't, but it is what it is. However, I'm not creating operas about it. Maybe, you know what? To be fair, we have had a podcast going on, and there's nothing more navel gazy than a podcast.
But this to me, there's a funny. I guess in a way, I've seen a lot of veteran themed things like this before, where it's like a one act play or a monologue, or I saw this production years ago that was like a multimedia production about this like Marines tour in Afghanistan. And I think the thing I remember walking out, because the Marine one was this thing called Bass Track Live, and I remember walking out of it I want to say it was in the University of Maryland, and I was there were a ton of civilians in the crowd, and as we were walking out, I just remember people being like, all right, well, that was great, but what was that? Who was that for? Like, was I supposed to learn something from that? And that's how I feel about this too. It's just sort of, it feels like, hey, I'm going to tell my story. My story is really, if not solipsistic, then very much like me only acknowledging myself. And this is meaningful because, and that's, I think the thing too, is like any kind of art I would like to hope has some wider implication as far as people's ability to like understand what it, understand your, as a creator, your sort of subjective position, and and identify with you or identify with the situation. And in a way, like, there's nothing about this that right off the bat I'm thinking, wow, that sounds interesting or revelatory or insightful. And like, no offense, because whatever, they're having an opera made. I certainly am not having an opera made. I spent this morning doing a spoken word reading of Taken by the T-Rex for Joe's show, an erotica novel about a Tyrannosaurus Rex and a tribe of cave people. And
see, there are
so
worse ways to spend your time than playing Civ 6.
there definitely are, but I'm getting paid to play Civ 6. I'm not a gaming streamer now. But at the same time, like this reminds me of a lot of what I would describe as the kind of like, these are stories that if someone else were to tell the story from the perspective of someone in the civilian world, a civilian who's had a similar big change in their life, a similar big thing take place, like, my take is that it wouldn't really merit mention. It's not that it wouldn't get made or wouldn't get produced. I mean, lots of shit gets fucking made. Who cares? You know what I mean? But in a way, it's just kind of, I'm wary of this stuff. I'm wary of someone who also has like written plans to write more about not getting so down the rabbit hole of thinking that because you're a veteran, for example, that your story is special by default, if that makes sense. And the last thing I'd say is the General Dynamics sponsoring a thing. It really, that really weirds me out.
Yeah,
that to me.
That's the problem. That therein is the real issue, is that you're not going to get General Dynamic. Like, at that point, oh, this is not critical of the drone war. Like, whatever it's going to be, it's not going to criticize it, at least to a point that says we should stop doing this. Unless General Dynamics is really just like, we hate drones so much because we want to make more F-16s, but probably not.
Yeah, I mean, it was really funny. Years ago, I had a friend from college who worked as a civilian at Booz Allen Hamilton in the Pentagon. And so she had a badge that could like get us into the SecDef's office, or like the wing of the SecDef's office. So she took me on like an after hours tour of the Pentagon. And like, it's very funny having like my friend from college who's not in the military show me. And like, I have my military ID so I can get in, but she's the one with the real clearance. And I was thinking about this, that when I went and saw her, I had to take the DC Metro to the Pentagon stop. And people who listen to this show who live in DC, this won't be a surprise to you at all. But for people who don't live there or haven't spent time there, the DC Metro is pretty new, pretty modern. I mean, relative to, it's not modern in terms of the fucking trains, but like, it's a relatively new mass transit system. The stations are real big, spacious, kind of cut, like big, almost like caverns. And the Pentagon station is quite big. And so coming up I believe it was escalators, you have just like this big kind of open atrium and stuff. And there were, on my way back, I think I noticed this, that as you entered the metro station, there were gigantic, like billboard sized ads for stuff like for drones, for example, for, I think it was General Dynamics. It might've been Raytheon. I can't remember, but one of the drone manufacturers, and this would have been in, early 2010, had a great big ad up in the station about like, we are battlefield lethality or some shit like that. You know what I mean? We support the warfighter, some dumb fucking defense speak like that. But that was something so strange to me to see that in person, or to see that, for example, DC has the heights of buildings act. So like buildings are, I think, like 13 or 14 stories. It might be higher than that. I can't remember. But it's DC. You can't build really tall buildings because they passed a law like in the early 20th century because like someone built a big hotel. They're like, oh no, it's going to turn into Manhattan. We can't have big tall buildings. But when you cross the river and you go into Arlington, they don't have a limitation on height there. And so you see as you're crossing on the whatever the highway is, all of these fucking defense contractor, like not skyscrapers, but big tall towers, like BAE Systems and Raytheon, General Dynamics, I think Fluor, stuff like that. And it's just like it kind of puts a finer point on like what DC's big generative industry is. Like, yeah, it's the national capital, but like it's also like defense industry.
Well,
ground zero.
It's best to have your headquarters next to all the people that give you money to build your death machines.
Yeah,
so.
And it's convenient for all of the retired 4-stars who retire from the Pentagon and then go to work as advisors for defense contractors while also serving on specialist expert boards for the military.
You know, when I was getting out of the Army and they were talking about careers afterwards, nobody ever mentioned I could be on the board of directors at Raytheon. I feel like maybe it's because I retired as a staff sergeant in Missouri, so maybe that had a little something to do with it. I feel like I should have been granted some equal access there.
Yeah, you're sort of like Stan McChrystal, Ray Odierno, David Petraeus grade person. They can definitely get one of what they call the sort of graybeard jobs, being an advisor to the Pentagon on acquisitions, but then also being paid on retainer by defense contractors. This is, it's definitely like, I remember this happening, and I think we talked about this years ago in the early part of the show, about the fact that the Boston Globe did a big story about like just how many general officers went on to do these jobs. It was like the overwhelming majority of them. And in Boston, that was like, wow, it's a big story, big news, big expose. And then DC, it's like, no one cares. Everyone knows.
Yeah.
It didn't really make an impact because no one, that didn't come as a surprise to anyone, because most of these guys were just like, hey, I'm a retired general. I also rep fucking Raytheon. Like, yeah.
Right. It feels like, you drop a retirement package as with a star on your shoulder, and then immediately your LinkedIn profile starts getting hit up by, recruiters for all these, like, who do you want to go work for? Though I imagine you've already probably built all of those relationships in the military, and your retirement is just like, well, I'm not going to get another star, but what I can do is go over here and make even more money and not have to put on, the stupid jumpsuit every day. I can wear a regular suit like a normal person and, do my death dealing that way.
I always thought about this, and I don't know if it would make for an interesting story or not, but I always thought this was funny. And it was this is like an anecdote, so I don't know if it's 100% true. So with all those caveats, I have to say the story I heard is that the program executive office soldier or PEO soldier group that met to determine the Army's new camouflage pattern in the early 2000s was headed by a guy who was a brigadier general. That's all I know. Like, I don't know the guy's name, but the story I heard was that this guy more or less went around or above all of the recommendations made to him by his staff and just arbitrarily chose the ACU pattern. And his retirement packet was in processing when this board was meeting. And then he retired and immediately just took a job with the company that makes ACUs.
Absolutely.
Made that pattern.
Yep.
And it's like,
I heard that.
Like I said,
I heard that story too. I think that's one of those true rumors that floats around that we all.
I would really be interested in knowing more about it. If someone out there listening knows that it's true or knows that it's bullshit or has more information, I would really love to know about it, because that's one of those things. Like, okay, there's the barracks rumors that go around, like, oh, Audie Murphy was secretly like a sex creep and he was going to get arrested, so he crashed his plane. That's 100% not true. Audie Murphy had nuclear grade PTSD and like would get fucking blackout drinking himself to sleep. One time held his ex-wife at gunpoint because she thought she was an intruder. He had horrible like Hope Diamond of PTSD, but there's no evidence of any of the biographies, anything written about him that he was like a sex abuser or anything like that. So somehow that got, I don't know if people just see this like babyface guy with every medal you can possibly have in his photo and they're like, oh, he must be a pervert or something. But as far as I'm aware, that's not the case. So, I don't, if it's a barracks rumor like that about the ACU pattern, the shitty gray camouflage pattern that looks like a broken TV that we wore for, the better part of a decade before they finally wised up and selected multicam. If that's true, I'd love to know about it. If it's completely bullshit and it's bullshit, I'd love to know that too. Because that one of like the kinds of rumors you hear, that one really doesn't strike me as too fanciful. You know what I mean? It seems like the kind of thing that would happen in defense acquisitions, which is what we were talking about before, talking about this opera. Like, that's the thing. It's just such a, I don't know. I just can't imagine General Dynamics sponsoring a fucking opera if it wasn't about a thing they were trying to tout. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing that weirds me out. Like the kind of, the veteran solipsism notwithstanding, the total lack of acknowledgement of the fact that like this isn't just a weird curio of your career. This is a program that, that deals death from the sky and very often kills lots and lots of innocent civilians.
And we're going to have an opera. We're going to have an opera about how that made us sad, killing you.
Right. I mean, that's at the end of the day. And here's the thing, right? Like, Frankie Boyle can go suck his own dick. Like, for one, because he's a dumbass, but for another, because like, I don't think that it's wrong to explore sort of like in creative work how people feel about being part of bad shit, even if they're participants. I don't think that there's like de facto, there's got to be a ban on that. You can't ever write a book about it. You can't ever deal with it in art. I think like but I do think that as much as that guy is he's annoying, he's rapidly becoming a fucking anti-woke edgelord. But one of the points that I think he made is that like, or he was kind of implicitly making, is not that American war movies talk about like, oh, the soldiers are sad, etc. The sort of Israeli literary trope of shoot and cry kind of thing. It's that like, it's to the exclusion of everything else. There is no acknowledgement about what it must be like to be a person who had to experience the war, not because they, volunteered or got drafted to serve in it, but rather that like they were living in this place and this fucking shit happened around them, to them. Not even acknowledging that in the first place. Not even like, not ever seeing that as anything but like, like not seeing them as anything but antagonists for your protagonist. Like,
right.
That, I don't know.
Regardless of the moral implications that your protagonist is feeling, you're still never looking at this from, from the view of the person on the ground who's getting hit with a drone.
Yeah, and then it leads you to this question, like you consume that kind of shit and you see it that way, and you wind up being like, wow, I wonder if Iraqis respect the American sniper. And it's like, I don't think they do. I don't think Iraqis are like, damn, Chris Kyle was a cool guy. You know what I mean? Because imagine what it must be like to be from Iraq and see a movie like American Sniper that basically is just like,
Now, to be fair, Americans currently are experiencing what it's like to be going about your daily business and somebody might come in and shoot the fucking place up. It's a little more chaotic than what the military does, but only a little bit. So I don't know. The entire process that's happening here, the creating all of this, having it funded by General Dynamics is, I don't know. Nate, I just don't know what the point of it is. Like, you were talking about the multimedia event from a veteran. I understand, like, a veteran's like, I want to tell my story. And
well, it wasn't by the veteran. It was just about the veteran. It was basically some people, like cinematographers, had filmed this, and then they followed this guy's story. And to make it interesting, they had to like do this personal story about this guy, and they had an actor sort of play him and talk about the experience. But like, there were some things that were interesting, and there were some things that were mega regrettable. To include one part where like they were simulating combat, or like, this really intense sequence, and we're playing like lots of combat footage and music that kind of sounded like B-grade Linkin Park that they had written for it.
That's probably depending on the year that the Marine was there. That's probably I listened to a lot of B-grade Linkin Park during my time in Afghanistan too. So
you went to Afghanistan in 2004 though. Yeah. This was after that. But yeah, man, like, once again, who's this for? Who cares? It does weird me out. And I mean, like, look, I recognize that in terms of the kind of overall moral question here, like, it can be it's a little murky, and for us to talk about it is a little bit weird in the sense that obviously we were a part of the machine too. But I guess regardless of how I've ever chosen or will choose to talk about my experiences, both like in the military, just stateside, and then also while deployed, I think that if a defense contractor wanted to sponsor it for a limited run at the Kennedy Center in DC. I got that right this time. I think I would be a little bit circumspect. So if you are a member, a patron of the Kennedy Center, and you go to see this, write in. Let us know what you think about the drone opera, Grounded. But I don't know. I'm I'm weirded out.
Yeah, it's fine.
Anyway,
It's an advertisement, is what it feels like. You know, you're gonna do it. It has a 2 week run exclusively in Washington D.C. for everybody with the lanyard to come over, every general to
yeah,
come over and say, "Oh yes, we are." Like this is all of the army is getting woke like concerns basically just culminate down into this, which is the army talking about its feelings about how bad it feels about having to kill people from a drone while pregnant, I
it's
guess.
also interesting too because it's like this is basically using opera to do one of those fucking like Propecia commercials where it's like ask your Secretary of Defense if the MQ-9 Reaper is right for you. Like it does feel a little icky, honestly.
Well, Nate, let's go ahead and shift gears. Let's do our hey dad question. Nate has been soliciting a lot of stuff, and we got a lot of good questions. So give us peel one off the top, and let's answer some. Let's be some dads here.
All right, so the first question that I received was what was the first moment when you realized, "Oh damn, I'm the dad here."
Oh man. So when my wife and I first got together, I was fresh back from Iraq. So this is 2010. And my wife, through some, I can't remember what organization or whatever it was, but she's like, hey, we can go be balloon wranglers at during the Thanksgiving Day parade. And what that means is you're one of the people that holds the strings down at the bottom. So usually, like in parades, if you've never been one of the balloon wranglers or one of the people in the parade, it's usually various groups. Like Girl Scouts will have one, Boy Scouts will have one, Knights of Columbus will have one. It's just like, hey, we're going to get together, we're going to be in the parade. So I am just started dating this woman. I've been we've been kind of dating for about 2 months, fresh back from Iraq. And the thing is in St. Louis, what they do is they have like they have this thing when you're doing the parade, and if you've got a balloon float, you spin it, right? So like at various times, you just everybody just goes in a circle and they turn the balloon, right? It's just I don't know. It's a thing that balloon wranglers do that people on the side cheer for, like yeah, spin the balloon, spin it. So we get there. It's cold. It's rainy. It's Thanksgiving. It's November, late November. So of course the weather fucking blows ass. And everybody I don't remember what the balloon was, but there had to be probably about 20 people that were wrangling this one. You got to have a lot of people holding on to the things. And I swear to God, these 20 people could not fucking figure out how to do a balloon turn because, and it's that like, it's not so much dad, but it is kind of because it's just kind of a leadership thing where it's just like, okay, all of you shut up and listen to me because none of you know what you're doing. Listen to what I'm going to say and then do the things that I'm going to say. And we're going to have a great time and we're all going to be perfectly fine. And I ended up taking over like captaincy of this balloon. And I told like, look, let's prep before we got out. I was like, okay, here's the thing. You're going to hear my voice. I'm going to yell, turn, turn, turn. Everybody is going to slowly walk in a circle and end in the exact same place where you were. That's how you know you're going to stop walking, and then we continue to walk forward. Do not do anything until you hear me yell, turn, turn, turn. And by God, Nate, it worked out. Everybody listened to me, and my Beth was very impressed with me at the time. She's like, you could have like hated me and run out because everybody there was obviously a dipshit. But really, what it was is that there was no leadership, and in a lot of ways, that's what fatherhood is to be the leader of your child and give them some kind of guidance. Hey, here's how to do things. Here's how we do this, that, or the other thing. And that was really, and this is, before I was a father. So it was more, I would say it's more of an NCO moment, but at the same time, I always think back to that during, fatherhood and, when I'm helping out like with my wife's girl or with my daughter's Girl Scout troop or, something like that, where you can say, hey, wait, everybody stop, listen. I'm going to give direction, or I've seen other people do that. When they're with this group, here's this direction that we're going to give you. So that was one of those first like I guess I was never really too worried about fatherhood because I figured out that I could get people to do what I wanted them to do. Then I had a kid, and then that went out the fucking window because my child does not listen to me. But that's a personal kid thing. Like none of your kids listen to you if you're a parent, so you understand that. But yeah, that was the first like kind of real leadership. I'm the only adult in the room, and I have to kind of take over here because nobody else is doing it. How about you,
Yeah, I
Nate?
mean, I have two, but one of them is kind of involves children in distress when I lived in Alaska. And so, like, the summarized version was that my neighbor was a soldier in my company who was leaving the army because of family care plan stuff, and he was both going through a really bad family situation and also really irresponsible. And the walked into, because he was my neighbor, heard about some commotion, he asked for some help, and realized that the kids were in a really bad spot. But like, it was just he was overwhelmed. And so I remember just like whatever plans I had that Saturday, which probably weren't very many, was, I just was like, let me help. And I just grabbed all of the dirty laundry, threw it into army duffel bags, took it to, I had a friend on post whose house I was just checking on while he was gone, had a washer and dryer, and just washed everything, brought it back, got a steam cleaner from, I either rented a steam cleaner from a civilian service or got it from on post thing and like steam cleaned the carpets and stuff like that, just because like the situation was bad. And I don't want to give too many details because like I don't want it to sound like it would freak people out. But it wasn't like him doing it, but it was people that he had been asking to watch the kids were neglecting them, and it was really bad. And so that I was probably about 24, 23, and I remember that moment and being like, "Whoa, this is kids in distress. They need help." And then because I helped, he also asked me how he's like, I'll call you if I need help, as opposed to like letting it get to a crisis, which led to situations like me suddenly having to handle dinner and then bath time and then bedtime for a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I remember calling my mom one time and be like, what do I do? Like they're just crying and they won't stop. What do I do? And she gave me pretty good advice. But I just remember I was like, how do you manage this? And she was like, they don't come out 2 and 4. Like you kind of learn progressively. But but I would say that the nicer version, the happier story was when I was in grad school, I remember we were doing this thing for some class we were in, some seminar, and we were supposed to have like an end of semester party. And we were like, oh, we're gonna have a party. And I'm like, all right, we're gonna bring some stuff. And I realized we were about to leave the room and nobody had actually agreed to what we need to bring. Nobody, and so there wasn't gonna be any coordination. And I really was like, hey, really sorry, just to make sure we have a, an idea of who's doing what. So we're gonna need to bring cups, who's going to bring cups? Someone raise their hand. All right, write it down. Who's going to bring plates? Got it. Who's going to bring utensils? Got it. Who's going to bring non-alcoholic drinks, water, sodas? Got it. Who's going to bring wine? Got it. Who's going to bring chips? Who's going to tick down this list of sort of what we needed to bring? And then I was like, all right, cool. I'll email this list now that I've got everyone's name, so everyone in the class, so everyone's tracking like what they or the people on the list are tracking what they need to bring, and sent that out. And the professor in church was like, well, that was military precision. And I was just like, no, I just realized like this would be a nightmare to do over email. And we're not going to see each other until the day we're supposed to all have this stuff. And there's a Target nearby, but it's like a 20-minute walk and everyone's going to forget. So I just remember that moment and be like, this is really happening. Like we're about to walk out and no one's going to know what to bring. And so that moment just snapped into place. And maybe that was military shit. I don't know, but that also felt very, what's the right word? Dad-like.
Fatherhood and being, fatherhood, like I said, is just kind of a leadership position over, one or two or how many kids that you have. So a lot of the military translates over. Now, I don't make my kid do push-ups, but she does like doing jumping jacks. So sometimes we do jumping jacks together. But not
I was always weirded out by the guys. I was always weirded out by the guys who wanted to do like, oh, I'll make my kids do wall sits when they misbehave or something like that. Like that just seems,
that's not
negative drill sergeant. Let's not do that.
Did you learn anything from that? No. Did it just suck ass and you hated your drill sergeant? Cool. Guess what's going to happen? But it's your dad. Like, you got your drill sergeant for like 12 fucking weeks. Your dad is for life. So don't fuck that up.
I realized this because I didn't go to basic, because obviously officer basic is like you can get in trouble, you can get smoked, you can have problems and shit, like mass punishment, but it's nowhere near as like that as basic training is for enlisted soldiers. So the one thing that I had that really was like that was Ranger School. And I was thinking about that. I was like, Did I really learn anything from my entire class getting smoked because like we came back from mission too early, even though we were successful and they just didn't know what to do with us, so they just harassed us? And did I really learn anything from instructors making us do overhead hand claps for probably without churching it up at least 20 to 30 minutes, if not closer to an hour, saying over and over and over again, the tab doesn't make the man makes the tab? No, I didn't learn shit from that. That sucked and it was stupid.
Yeah, we make fun of like the Russian army for constantly hazing its new recruits and its conscription people, and like to be fair, the Russian army does do it to a really horrifying extent,
shocking and brutal extent.
Right,
yeah.
that does no good for anybody and actually just exacerbates the problem. However, the military is also like the United States military is very much the same, where it's just like, oh, you didn't do what I wanted you to do, so what? Like I got the first time I got smoked in basic training was for wearing the wrong underpants. And like all I learned from that, like that was the very first, like, this is all fucking bullshit. This is the dumbest bullshit I've ever been involved in. And to be fair, my brother gave me that warning too. He's like, before you go to basic, just understand they're not going to ask you to do anything that you can't do. Also, it's all bullshit. So don't take it too seriously. You know, it's not, it's like basic training is not the real army. You know, you'll get out into the real army later on. So
yeah, fond memories of being left in the front leaning rest on a sand road during a thunderstorm during Special Forces, the first phase of the Q course, and being like, what am I doing with my life?
Right. Certainly, I imagine, like, you know, once you graduate Special Forces and you go off to, you know, do war crimes across the world, being in the push-up position in rain in a sandbox is very useful training that comes in handy for you.
Yeah, I mean, that was, people were like, man, how could you quit? And I'm like, I think the idea to quit the Special Forces program germinated in that moment of whatever it was we got in trouble for. I don't even think it was our own fault. I think it was another cohort of students got in trouble for someone got caught with a GPS. And so they just punished all of us.
Right.
And it's like, I was like, yeah, this is stupid.
Like
anyway.
You always wonder about all those guys. It's like, oh, these are the guys who got to Special Forces. Like, yeah, they're the ones who weren't smart enough to get out, maybe.
Right. I mean, like, look, on one hand, they're like, you were the elite of the elite, blah, blah, blah. But on the other hand, it's like, they run like 9 selection classes a year, and they take like, you know, 120 to 150 people each selection class. So that's putting you, you know, in and around, let's say 1,800 to 2,000 people per year are being selected to be, you know, go into the training pipeline. So it can't be that special. And at the end of the day, you know, I'm glad I left. I'm glad I do this now. I don't necessarily like reading dinosaur erotica for my other show, but it's a, you know,
I imagine you were more comfortable reading dinosaur erotica than you were in the front lane and rest position in the rain.
In a sandbox. Yeah, you're right. I was. And so with that, all I can say is to summarize this episode, if General Dynamics wants to sponsor your work of art, you should probably think very hard about what kind of art you're creating. And with that, Francis, all I can say is I will speak to you next week. And if fans of the show, friends of the show, you like this, just bear in mind, we have a Patreon. Link is in the show notes to this episode. $5 a month gets you every bonus episode we've ever done since 2017. There's a whole lot of content. So if that sounds interesting, check that out.
So much content. Everybody, thank you so much. Also, you can get all kinds of swag at hellofawaytodie.com. Doing a button of the month thing now because I have a button maker and I have a lot of free time now. So check out the website, check out all of our bonus stuff. Please come subscribe, give us more content, and give us more questions. Looking forward to answering more of your dad questions. But Nate, other than that, we'll talk to you next week.
Yep. Take care.